Our next guest owns a truck that looks like something out of Batman The Dark Knight Rises, only this one has more gadgets. He's a former UFC welterweight champion and is coming off an impressive win over the always tough Matt Brown. Johny Hendricks, welcome to Submission Radio.
Hey, thank you for having me.
Hey, the pleasure is all ours. Now, Johny, how have the last few weeks been for you after that dominant victory over Matt Brown? We're imagining you treated yourself to some kind of massive carb-filled meal at the Big Rig Steakhouse.
Yeah, we did. I've eaten my steakhouse a couple times, but realistically, I am. Right now I've already started lifting weights last week. This week we're starting to put on more muscle. That's really been my focus the last camp, and also this camp. The weight cut was a lot easier, and I just want to make it easier and easier on my body.
Yeah, certainly right, Johnny. I mean, the performance that you had against Matt was very impressive, very, very dominant. It's a few weeks removed from the fight. After the fight, you mentioned that you weren't happy with certain aspects in the fight that you performed. A few weeks out, how do you feel about the fight? Are you still a little bit disappointed with certain aspects of the fight?
I did good. I did good. I think it was more or less the leading up to the fight. Because that was the first day coming down Mike Dolce, and those kind of things were always playing through your head. Is it going to be this? Is it going to be easy? And then, like I said, you can't take nothing away from Matt Brown. We knew he was going to be coming after me, and that's why the wrestling, it makes it a little bit easier when a guy like that is taller than you and is always pressuring you. I know the fans wanted to see, and it could be it's just my preference. I wanted to do more stand-up, but, when a guy's always just, you hit him, and you're doing stuff, and they're always coming forward. Sometimes you got to mix it up. I figured it'd slow him down some, but it didn't. And we sort of thought that too, but it's just one of those things that you just got to sit there and say, hey, I'm happy with being able to beat Matt Brown first off, and second of all, it just moves me right back in that title.
Yeah, for sure. The positive thing is you look like you're in tremendous shape against Matt Brown. The six-pack was out. You were a lot more shredded than in your previous fight. How did you feel physically, and would you say that you hit your physical peak for this last fight?
Yeah, I did. I felt really good. I think I need to drink a little bit more water the day of the fight. Usually, I'm bumping up to like 200. You know what I mean? I fight around 195, 200. I think I stepped in the octagon at like 188 this fight. So I think I was a little bit dehydrated going into this one. So, I didn't really start sweating. I got really bad cotton mouth in between rounds. And that's something that we're going to work on. And that's half my fault too, because like I said, this is all new, being by myself. So it's going to be a learning curve. It definitely is. But I'm happy with what happened, and I'm going to get better.
Yeah, that's a great point. Now, we remember reading a quote from you where you said that you're not going to stop living your life. We think it was in regards to dieting, and you'd still like to enjoy food despite being a fighter. How hard was the decision for you to change that up? And by changing your diet, are you still able to enjoy the food that you used to? Or are they all out the window now?
Here's the thing, is that, no, actually, I haven't eaten healthy since my fight. And I'm still waking up a little under 200. You know what I mean? And one thing I've learned is portion control. You know what I mean? That's so. For example, if I eat pizza, instead of eating the whole thing, I eat 3 slices, and then I put it up. You know what I mean? Or if I go out to eat, I eat until I'm full, but not like over full. And I think that's sort of everybody's problem, is that whenever you're paying for something, you're like, oh, I want to get it all down. And so I'm starting to eat more leftovers and stuff like that. And I think that's really helping me learn that. And as soon as I get on my diet, I'm waking up at 200 right now. There's a chance that, let's see here, I could probably be walking around at 92. And that'd be nice. You know what I mean? An extra 8 pounds I don't have to lose, or an extra 3 pounds to 4 pounds from the last camp. It's just going to make life easier.
Yeah, I think we can learn a lot from that. Let us ask you, Johnny, what was the weight cut difference between your last Lawler fight and your fight against Matt Brown?
My wife and me, we got some friends involved with it. And what we do is every Sunday after church, we would everybody come over and we'd meal prep for the week. And not only that, but I also added a lot of weightlifting. You know what I mean? I think you all could tell from the last weight cut to this one, I feel like I'm stronger, and I feel like I have more muscle to pull from. You know what I mean? And the more muscle you can pull from, the more water weight you can hold, and the easier the weight comes out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course.
And so that's sort of what we've been playing with, and that's why I want to get a little bit more muscle and a little less fat. It's just going to move me down the road a little bit quicker and a little bit better.
Yeah, certainly. Now, you've mentioned a few times that obviously you're doing the weight cut by yourself. You had Mike Dolce help you in the past with your weight cut. You mentioned that you doing it by yourself. What was the decision behind sort of not doing it with Mike anymore and just doing it by yourself?
The reason why is because we always called him sort of the miracle worker, because he'd get me from 215 down, or 220 down to 170. And I think I relied too much on him. Does that make sense? And this last weight cut, or the last weight cut, whenever I was using him, I was just like, you know what? I got to do it by myself. If I don't do it by myself, then I'm not going to make the changes. And that's sort of what really pushes to, and we split good. You know what I mean? I still like Mike Dolce. I still, if I see him, I'm going to be happy to see him. Like, he's still working with me, if that makes sense. But I just knew that it was time for me to really separate myself and say, hey, if people are going to be calling me fat or out of shape or this or that, it's time to take it in my own hands.
Well, let me ask you, because obviously there's a lot of different opinions. You've got some guys that are on one side of the fence and they don't really believe in Dolce's methods, using BJ Penn and Tito Ortiz as an example. And then you got other guys, I think Vitor Belfort and Chael Sonnen, who, really swear by him. What's your experience been like with Dolce? And, do you think the Dolce diet works?
Okay, it does, because even still today, I still use some of the Dolce diet. Does that make sense? The only thing is that I just add seasoning to a lot of my stuff. You know what I mean? So, and he got me from 215 to 170 for what, 2.5 years? You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think he works. You know what I mean? But then again, everybody's different. And the reason why I say this is because, for example, if you go out and try to get a striking coach today, are you going to, and whenever you're doing something, definitely like this, whenever your life's sort of on the line, if that makes sense, if you go out there and you got to get into an octagon with somebody, and that they're going to be trying to beat your face in, and are you just going to trust anybody? You know what I mean? It's like a trust barrier that sometimes people have it, and they say, hey, it's the best thing ever. You know what I mean? And then there's going to be guys that, when stuff like this happens, they're going to be like, man, I just didn't feel it. And that's where I say, to each their own. You know what I mean? Maybe those guys, they didn't feel it. You know what I mean? Maybe they didn't, they weren't, they didn't have that connection. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And whenever you're stepping into an octagon, like I said, it's a little bit different if you're just losing weight. But whenever you're trying to actually get in there and be at your peak performance, it's always a little tougher to get that.
Certainly different strokes for different folks. Now, another fun thing that happened and came out of UFC 185 was that picture that Ben Askren tweeted out outside your door with a caption, "I keep on knocking, but he won't let me in." What were your thoughts on Ben's tweet, and what's going on with this rivalry that's crossed over from wrestling that's sort of starting to kick into MMA now?
I haven't paid any attention to it. Are you kidding me? Look what, here's the thing. He's going to do anything he can to get me on into the UFC. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't he? You know what I mean? But you also can't call the owner or the manager. You can't sit there and say stuff to him and act like it's going to be okay when it comes time to get in there. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And that's sort of the thing is that, he sees that I could be his meal ticket and I'm not going to be that. Does that make sense? So I don't care what he says. Yeah, I got to worry about Robbie Lawler. I got to worry about Rory MacDonald, and a bunch of other guys that are coming for me. You know what I mean? Or coming for that belt. You know, and so as of right now, there, you know, he could say whatever he wants to, do whatever he wants to, but I don't know, you know, if people are listening in a sense.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because I'm not. Like I said, you know, I'm focused on Robbie Lawler and Rory MacDonald and see what happens. That's where my main focus is, because I want that belt back. Once I get that belt back, then whoever they throw at me, I don't care.
Yeah, certainly. And just to clarify, there was no one outside your door knocking on the door, right? Ben was just mucking around with everyone.
Yeah, he was probably knocking on his own door.
Janitor door, who knows? Yeah, okay.
Now, we want to go back and talk about this Robbie Lawler fight, because obviously this is a big moment. You know, after your fight against Robbie Lawler, you know, you said your body shut down. We're the type of guys, the only thing we shut down is either our computer or our PlayStation. At that moment during the fight, what was going through your body, and can you explain what you felt when your body shut down?
Yeah, round four is where I was sitting here. I got up, I saw Robbie, and I was like, okay, I got this. You know what I mean? And we went out there, touched gloves, started just fine, and about a minute into it, the fourth round is whenever I was like, you know, you hit a wall. You know what I mean? And when you hit that wall, I've competed all my life. I know how to dig deep. And that's really what you have to do. You just have to sit there and say, all right, are you going to lose this fight because of this, or are you going to win it? You know what I mean? Even though I was sitting there, I felt like I won it. It didn't turn out that way. You know what I mean? So, and that's sort of the way that you just got to look at it. You just got to sit there and say, all right, you hit that wall, your arms feel like they weigh 50 pounds to 100 pounds. You know what I mean? You're carrying around a 50 to 100 pound weight. Your legs feel like jello. You know what I mean? Like everything's like just, the best way I can explain it feels like a marathon. And whenever you hit like mile 22, you know what I mean, to get to that 26, the last 4.5 miles or 4.2 miles, that's where you got to dig deep. That's sort of what it feels like.
Mm. Now, take us into the moment, because it's happened before with your fight with the GSP. When Robbie's name was announced as the new champion, what was the first thing that went through your mind? Did you think this is ridiculous? Was it similar to the GSP thing, or did you sort of understand where they were coming from with that one?
No, I didn't. You know, and I, you know, I've looked at a lot of things. I think there's things out there that says I outpunched him, I outstruck him, I took him down, even though I wasn't able to do some things on the ground. But they still got to count for something. You know what I mean? Two is, you know, I pushed, even though he was sort of pushing forward, a lot of his stuff didn't hit. I was doing angles, you know. Whenever they read off that, I was actually disappointed. You know what I mean? Because that's the second time something like that happened. The first time, you know, you're shocked, but you're not really, because, you know, you're fighting somebody like GSP. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And I thought I did enough to win, but, you know, I guess they didn't see it. But to beat the champion, you've got to really beat the champion. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I don't think he did. You know what I mean? I still feel like I won that fight. But in the record books, it's I think it's funny. You know, I'm 1-4 in the UFC, or 1-4 in Vegas. Do you know that?
Didn't realize that. No. Yeah,
I'm 1-4 in Vegas, and wow. What am I? 17-3.
Yeah.
So it's disheartening. Yeah, I mean, I love Vegas. I'll go back, but it's still I got to figure out what the judges want. You know what I mean? I got to look at them and I got to sit there and say, okay, you want this, you like that. That's what I'm going to work for. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And that's really where I have to. You know, again, you go in there and you try to put on a show. You try to do this. You try to do that. Make fans happy, and then stuff like that happens. Then you're like, okay, well, what do I got to do to win that fight? You know what I mean? Then you start going back and you relook at it, and you're like, okay, well, if I would have, you know, a GSP second round, I had him down on his back. He couldn't get up. You know what I mean? The crowd started booing a little bit, and guess what I did? I let him up. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Okay, well, he couldn't get up from the bottom. If I'd have kept pounding it and, kept throwing punches and doing stuff like that, that would have wore him out a lot more heading into the third, fourth, and fifth round. So those are the things that you're really, it starts weighing on you because, I want to keep the fans happy and I want to do these things, but I also want to win.
Looking back on it, you mentioned that you let GSP out because the crowd is booing. Do you regret that at all? Do you sort of look back and go, oh man, if I only held him down more, it could have gone differently?
No, I don't regret it because, if you rewatch the fight, I did everything I wanted to do. You know what I mean? Like, literally, that's a fight that I can look back and say, it was a great weight cut. It was a great fight. I did everything, and I did it the best I could. Does that make sense? Like, that was the fight that I have no regrets on. You know what I mean? And that's really what I'm focusing on. You just got to sit there and say, hey, it is what it is, and you move forward.
Yeah, certainly. Now let's get on to this Rory MacDonald Robbie Lawler fight. Obviously happening at UFC 189. The general consensus is you should be the next man to face whoever wins that for the title. Who are you picking in that matchup and why?
That's a great question because it's rough because you're sitting here, you're looking at that fight. The first fight was close. I mean, it was closer than I remember. Because every time I looked up, I'd hear a crowd, the crowd yelling, and I'd be like, oh, man. At first I was like, man, Robbie Lawler really took it to Rory MacDonald. And then I rewatched it. I thought it was a lot closer than before. I still think Lawler won, but I think it was a lot closer than I even gave credit to. Because I'm in the back warming up. But this fight, I think, Rory MacDonald, he's got great coaches. They're going to figure out a way. They're game planners. They're guys that are going to do this, this, and this, and they're going to make sure that everything runs to a T. And so this one is, I'm actually sort of excited to see because, Robbie Lawler, you can never count him out of a fight because no matter what you do, he seems like he's always in it. You know what I mean? So this is a fight that's going to be can Robbie Lawler walk him down and land that punch, or can Rory MacDonald keep him at bay, keep him at distance, and get the win?
Now, obviously, you faced Robbie twice. Rory, you haven't. Ideally, who would you rather face? If someone said, okay, you can choose who wins it, and you go on to face the winner, who would you rather face?
Again, it always, this has torn me for a while now. There's a part of me that'd like to get a win over Robbie Lawler. You know what I mean? But then again, it'd be nice. It was sort of nice to train for somebody new. For the 3 months, it gets boring. Whenever you fought him and you trained for him and you trained for him, and then going back and training for him again, I will. But you know what I mean? It's like you want that to train for him again, so that way you can get your hand raised, and then it can be over with. Or you can sit there and say, hey, it'd be nice for 3.5 months to train for somebody like Rory MacDonald. You know what I mean? Train for new stuff to always improve.
Certainly. Now, Johnny, we let the fans know you're coming on the show. We have to choose just a couple of questions because we know how short on time you are. So we're just going to quickly ask them. The first one is from username The Raging Bull. He says, your fight with GSP was very exciting. Obviously, a lot of fans feel like he won that fight. Do you think GSP will ever come out of retirement? And if he does, would you ever be open to have a rematch with him to maybe get an official W on the record against him?
For that question is that like I tell everybody, man, he did so much for the sport. Hey, there's a part of me that sits there and says, yes, I'd love to have him back because I would like to fight him again. But then there's also a part of me that you're never going to be able to take away what he did. Does that make sense? He did a lot of stuff for the sport and a lot of stuff for the welterweight division. So there's a part of it that says, hey, stay in retirement and let us see who the next sort of GSP will be. You know what I mean? So that's where my head's at.
Sure. Next question is from Broadblade. Hey, Johnny, how would you think a fight goes between GSP and Lawler since you fought both of them?
Oh, that's a great question. I think GSP is going to be Robbie Lawler. He's tough to take down, but I'm not really the type of guy that wants to take him down. I think GSP would be able to take him down. I don't think GSP could get hit by him, but I think that he will be able to take him down and wear him out. You know what I mean? But then again, it always goes back to you can't ever count that guy out. I've seen it time and time again. Definitely whenever I was watching his fight, studying for him, you're like, man, this guy's about to lose. And then my coach would be like, wait for it. And then boom, Robbie Lawler's the winner. You're going, oh, you know what I mean? So that's the thing is whenever you have that one-punch knockout power, you're always in the fight. Doesn't matter if it's the first round or the fifth round. You just can't count a guy out with power.
And just as a quick follow-up, having fought both of them, who would you say was tougher? Who was the tougher test?
Okay. GSP was a tough test because he's the guy, like I said, he's the guy that's always going to be sticking to doing, he's a game planner, you know what I mean? And you got to break that game plan every second of every round. You know what I mean? Lawler's the type of guy that doesn't really care. He's going to be the guy that's going to try to just constantly close the distance and get in your face. You know what I mean? So they both have their challenges. You know what I mean? The thing with Robbie Lawler is that he has that one-punch knockout power. So that was a little bit dangerous, and it's always a little bit dangerous to take somebody who has power. But you can also get beat up on the ground with elbows and everything else just as bad, but Lawler could finish in one punch.
Yeah, great points there, Johnny. Now, we're going to quickly do this thing to finish off the interview with you. We call the Submission Radio Tap Out Round. It's basically a bunch of fun questions, a little bit like word association. You sort of just answer with the first words that come to your mind, okay? Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, you're at Big Rig Steakhouse. The waitress asks Johny Hendricks, what will you have? Give us the Hendricks signature meal when you're not in training camp.
Let's see here. New York strip with baked potato, corn, and a salad.
Fantastic. Johnny, you live in Texas, and we've always wanted to understand something, to do with your great state. How come all of George Strait's exes live in Texas, and he has to hang his hat in Tennessee? It just seems unfair to us.
Okay, because one thing about Texas women is they're a little bit tougher, a little bit rougher than most other places.
Now, Johnny, when you were champion, you obviously made the point of not letting people take photos with your belt because you made the valid point of how much hard work went in to actually get the belt. Do you think it was disrespectful for Conor McGregor to rip the belt away from from Jose Aldo during the press conference in Dublin? Do you think the champ deserves more respect?
Yes, I do. Now, if Aldo said, hey, you want to hold my belt, and he took it that way, yes. But, to rip it from somebody who earned it is yes. That's where I I like McGregor, but that's where I had to say, hey, that's not because I understand he's doing it for publicity or whatever he's doing it for, but hey, get it, then you can do it. Does it make sense? But until it's actually wrapped around your waist, that's where I'm just like, hey, cross the line.
Sure. Quick question about your truck, the Ford F650. You must have had at least a couple of funny stories about trying to park that thing when you drive around in it. Can you share one of those with us?
Yeah. So, for example, people with lifted trucks, they'll drive next to you, and they're like, dude, I love your truck. You know what I mean? So what I do is I'll actually lean down, you can see perfectly fine in somebody who has a really high lifted truck. You can see perfectly fine in it, but sometimes I'll lean down and act like I can barely look inside their truck, because of the hood or the top of their truck.
Yeah.
I'll look down and I'll be like, oh, thanks, man. And they just they look at me like, why'd you do that? Also, I have a big air horn on there. So when we first got it, they were like, let's hear what the horn sounds like. And there was actually a UFC guy there, and he had the microphone right under, almost about 5 foot away from where my air horn is.
Oh, my God.
And I was sitting there, I honked the horn. I was like, man, that can't be it. I saw a button with a horn. Man, I hit that. There's about 30 people there. They all jumped. And that guy, he jumped, and he was like, oh, my gosh. Because he had a microphone and those headbuds on.
Yeah.
Oh, it hurt him. I was like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, speaking of the truck, Johnny, would you ever consider entering one of the UFC fights to music from Batman: The Dark Knight and just driving the truck to the octagon? Or do you think the arena would need to be restructured to even fit that thing in?
Yeah, you couldn't drive that. Some of those turns, I would literally have to back up, then drive. It might take me 30 minutes to get it to the cage.
Johnny, second last question. Give us the number one TV show you can't stop watching lately.
Yeah, that's a great question. My favorite one is sort of NCIS.
Yeah, nice. And
you
finally,
got Mr. Gibbs and Tony, and yeah, great show.
yeah, they sound like a good bunch. And now finally, Johnny, give us the last question. Is there an opportunity or a chance that Johny Hendricks may visit Down Under in the future and grace the Australian MMA fans one day soon?
Here's the thing is that, if I can, I would like to visit there. My wife's been talking, we had some friends, I think somebody actually fought there. And so we might be, if the UFC's back there and we get a chance to go, we might be on that flight.
Awesome.
Sorry, Cass. I was just going to interject. Obviously, we've got a huge stadium show here planned, possibly in Melbourne, 50,000, maybe even plus in November. What do you think? If there's a title shot opportunity, do you think there may be a chance that Big Rig may be fighting on the card?
Ooh, that's a great question. Don't know yet. You know what I mean? I really don't. Hey, we will see. Time will tell.
We're trying to butter you up for this one. And the good thing is, Johnny, that there's a huge movement in Melbourne. I think we like to call ourselves the food capital of the world. There's a huge movement towards, Texan-style barbecue and all those kind of smoked meats. So if you do come here in Melbourne, there'll be a lot more to enjoy than, just obviously the fight festivities. Guys, don't forget to check out Johnny's restaurant, Big Rig Steakhouse. And if you're in Texas, we hear the steak is amazing. And follow Johnny on Twitter at Johny Hendricks. Once again, Johnny, it's been our pleasure to chat to you today. Thanks for your time.
Hey, thank you guys. Y'all have a great day.
You too, Johnny. Bye.